Hi, I'm Naomi Hall, and I want to welcome you to our virtual summit on stress management for educators. My whole goal with this summit is to give you powerful steps to reduce your stress and increase your quality time for yourself and for your family. Because when you're stressed and overwhelmed, you just can't see, find, or make that time for yourself or for your family. And we know our families are important. So today, I have with me Amber Harper. And Amber is a full time kindergarten teacher and a teacher burnout coach. So, after struggling with burnout herself for most of her career, in 2016, she wrote The Burned In Teacher. Actually, that's not the name of your book, but you created The Burned In Teacher at that point.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, and
Mhm.
so now she uses her book, her podcast, her online course, and community to coach teachers through burnout with her 8 step burned in process to help them use burnout as an opportunity, which I find so interesting, for growth so that they can live a more fulfilled career in life. So, welcome, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I love that you are in the classroom. You have
Mhm.
experienced burnout yourself. So, you have the firsthand experience. Unfortunately, you have the
Right.
firsthand experience
Yeah.
that a lot of teachers have. So, can you tell us about your journey with stress and burnout?
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to give you the shortened version, although as we all know, burnout is really deeply personal and it's deep. So it takes a lot longer than a quick synopsis. But I started teaching in 2007 and basically from that first year all the way through to about the time that I had my infamous emotional and mental breakdown in front of my teacher friends that I'm very open about. That was in 2014. I really did ride that roller coaster of burnout over and over and over again for various reasons. Once for from a toxic team, those first 2 years that I was teaching, I worked with a team that was just not a good fit for me. And I just dreaded going to work because of them. Um, a year or two later, I started burning out because I was working too much and I was overwhelmed. My expectations for myself were super high. And all the while in the background, I had a very volatile relationship with my administration. And that was always in the back of my mind. I also, when I started teaching third grade, I really took very personally the testing. And when my students didn't do well on the test, and we all know that those tests are not set up for students to actually pass, when they didn't, I took it so personally because I had worked so hard to help them to be successful, and I wanted them to feel successful, and so that started to burn me out. And so when I say that I have experienced this and that I built this process based on my own experiences, it really is. And I believe that Burn In Teacher was actually born in 2014 when I wore and I kept all of these hardships and all of these challenges very, very close. And of course, I vented about them, which I thought was healthy. And it is to a certain point. But I didn't change anything. I didn't change
Mhm.
any of my habits. I didn't change any of my beliefs in myself and what I was capable of. I just told myself these nasty negative narratives over and over and over again. And it finally did come to a head in 2014 over something that had literally nothing to do with teaching. We had gotten a brand new puppy in July. Who doesn't get a puppy like right before school starts, right? It's like the best idea ever.
Mhm.
Not. So we lived about 3 minutes away from the school. So I didn't care. I took that upon myself to say, I'll go home and let him out during my prep period every day. It's not going to be a big deal. I'll let him out. I'll go to the bathroom, put him back in, come to school, teach for another hour and a half, 2 hours. Everything was fine that fall until this one particular day I went to let him out and he had crapped all over his kennel. Like there's no nice way to put it. And he had sat in it, rolled in it. He was an absolute disgusting mess. And I fell apart. I had an absolute breakdown and I could not pull myself back together. And when I really look back and reflect on that moment, it was because this situation was totally out of my control. Like it was nothing that I had done.
Mhm.
There was nothing I could do other than clean him up as quickly as I could and get back to school. But I think what it did is it opened up a door of how out of control I felt of my life
Mhm.
at that moment in time. And I went back to school. I tried so hard to stop crying and the tears I don't know if you've ever had a moment like that in your life. And I've talked to
Mhm.
so many teachers and they're like, I've been there too. I just could not stop. I still get emotional talking about it. I've told this story hundreds of times.
Mhm.
It was the darkest moment of my life.
Mhm.
And, obviously we've gone through some really hard personal things, that have happened in our life. But when I'm talking about my belief in my lack of hope, I guess is where I was. My lack of hope that I could be a happy person was just so huge. And I remember walking through the door and I was hysterical. And we were a large team of 9 teachers, 9 third grade teachers, and they were all standing around chit chatting before the kids came in from recess. And my husband had worked in the same school for almost 8 years, and he moved to a different district to become an assistant principal. And I was in such an awful state. They thought he had died. Like, they were like, "Is Jeff okay?" And I was like, "No, Oliver, he crapped in his kennel." And I just sobbing, they could barely understand me. And my friend Jane, I will never forget this. She is the most like upfront, in your face, very honest, not afraid to say, what needs to be said. She goes, "You've got to be kidding me." Like, and it was like, imagine the underwhelm. Someone walks in hysterical and they're upset because a dog pooped in a kennel. Like, I
Mhm.
realize how ridiculous that is. I do. But it was such a huge alarm to me. It was so alarming to me that I was so emotional about this that there was obviously a lot more going on in my life under the surface than what I had shown or what I had really expressed.
Mhm.
And people were really worried about me, and I was worried about me, frankly. So that's in a nutshell. I mean, there's so many different stories within that I could share, but that is why I am so extremely passionate about teaching alongside of coaching other teachers through their burnout, because it's not as simple as drinking more water. It's not as simple as doing yoga. It's not as simple as meditating. It is such a deeply personal problem that
Mhm.
it takes time. Like, it takes time to go through this. And I had to kind of pick my way and, search my way blindly through how to really move through this, because
Mhm.
there was no path for me. And that's what I've created through Burn In Teacher.
Well, I so relate to your story of
Mhm.
like that uncontrollable crying. I couldn't even tell you what happened, but I vividly remember standing in the staff bathroom, door locked, sobbing
Mhm.
uncontrollably, like
Mhm.
hiccup sobbing
Yes.
in there. And it was, like you said, it was nothing huge. It was nothing that should have caused that level of distress and
Yeah.
trying to pull myself together again to walk back into my classroom.
Exactly. And that is why I really focus, like, we're talking about ourselves, right? We're talking about our well-being. We're talking about trying to live our best life, trying to be happier in our career, or trying to even know what to do. But when
Mhm.
it comes down to it, I walked back into my classroom and I had to teach 27 kids for an hour and a half after that. It was it couldn't have been more obvious that I had been crying. My eyes were puffy. I was still trying to pull myself together whenever they came in. Like, I had teachers that like took my class for a second so I could go try to pull myself together, but in the end, like, they knew something was wrong. And that day, the rest of the day's lessons were out the window. And our burnout affects our kids. It affects our biological children if we have them, and
Mhm.
our families, but it affects our students. And in this case, what's best for kids is what's best for teachers. And we
Mhm.
want students to realize that they have the potential to change their lives if things aren't going the way that they want them to. We should also believe that for ourselves. And at that point, I did not believe that for myself. I felt so stuck. Even though I loved teaching, I felt so stuck. And like I said earlier, out of control, that I didn't know where to go. I just parked myself in this burnout and believed that that was my destiny.
Yeah, and I think there are so many teachers in that spot right now, and this is part of why I do what I do and why I have this summit is there are so many teachers in that spot of I love being a teacher and I love what I do, but
Mhm,
I just don't know what to do. Like
mhm,
you, I had to pick and choose my way through my journey to find out what was there for me, what I could do. There wasn't anybody like you and me
mhm.
to like coach me through it and help me find my path and to like you said, it's not just drinking more water, it's habits and mindsets that you have to change.
Yeah.
But I want teachers to like look at people like you and go, it can be done. There is hope.
Mm.
I don't have to leave my career.
Right. And
Like,
for some teachers, that is the best
mhm,
next step. I mean, I left teaching that year in the middle of the year.
mhm,
I've left teaching twice and returned twice. It's like I am no, I don't keep secrets. I'm very honest about my journey. It's messy. It's not sexy. And I really had to find my path through trial and error. And I had to find my path through taking chances and failing and trying again and just, not settling for a life that I felt like I was stuck in. I felt like at that point that I was alive, but I wasn't really living,
mhm,
and that's where in 2014, I really decided that I was going to have to make some major moves in my life. And it meant moving out of that school, out of that district to a different job where I was still in education, but I wasn't in the classroom in that district. It ended up not working out in my favor, and I was humiliated. I ended up back in the classroom in a different district, so that was my leaving and returning story number 1. But if I didn't take those chances and I didn't end up in that district, which is actually the district that I'm in now. I've left this district once and I came back, okay? Um, but for totally different reasons. I would never have had the opportunities that I had here at this district that I had at the other one. Like I wouldn't I don't know if Burned In Teacher would have ever been
mhm.
actually come into fruition had I not left, tried something, failed, gone to another district and had the opportunities that I had to grow there. Um, so it's kind of a journey of, like I said, taking chances, maybe failing a little bit, but learning about yourself along the way. And that's something that I was too scared to do. I told myself before that I couldn't do anything different. I couldn't change.
Mhm. Yeah, it it's such a journey, and I love
Mhm.
your openness about the journey and the pathway, and that it's not a straight path for any
No,
of
it's
us,
not
by
linear. No.
any means. Like you said, like, you may go through burnout multiple times and in multiple ways
Mhm.
for different reasons, and, tell us a little bit about your book and how hacking teacher burnout came to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for asking. So, in 2016, after, like I said, I had left the district that I was previously in, went to another role, ended up not working out, and went to this new district. I was invited to go to a Google Summit. My second year, no, it was my first year there, and I was like, "All right, I'll go. Maybe I'll meet some new people." I didn't really know anybody at this district. And ended up being super inspired and became a Google certified educator, trainer, and innovator. And well, back up a little bit. On our way home from this conference, I was super inspired and I was feeling so excited to go back to school. I just felt really reignited. And we had stayed up way too late, as we teachers do whenever we go to a conference. And I fell asleep on the way home. And I remember waking up and I was like, Burned In Teacher. Like, I need to tell my story.
Mhm,
And I need to talk about Google. Like I need to talk about how I'm doing this for myself. I'm growing in my educational technology and understanding and knowledge. And so I bought the domain the next day and started blogging both about my burnout, being super honest about my my challenges and what I was trying to do about it. I started listening to books. I started to listen to these new things called podcasts.
mm,
Um, and then, so I called originally when Burned In Teacher came to be, it wasn't an 8-step process. It was the opposite of burned out, burned in, right? 180 degrees different. Um, and so I was driving to school one day and I had just read over the summer of 2016, I had read Ditch That Textbook and Teach Like a Pirate. And both of these books are based on acronyms, right? Ditch stands for certain steps to take, and pirate stands for certain steps to take to teach like a pirate. And I was like, what if Burned In? I still have the voice memo to this day on my phone. I said, what if Burned In was a process that I could like take teachers through and like help them to, move through their burnout the way that I am right now?
mhm,
And what if B was like begin where you are? Like we started by reflecting on what brought us to this point, et cetera. What if U was like understand yourself? R was like reflect or, something like that. So I started talking through that. And then I just started writing. I just started writing down like, okay, all of these things that I'm learning about how to cope and how to grow your mindset and how to have a vision and have a plan for yourself and truly be the best version of yourself and build self-awareness and build boundaries and, have courage, all of these things that I had been just consuming like crazy. How do I put this in a really simple format so that I can teach other people and I can help them as well? Because I know there are other people that are out there that feel like me. So Burned In is the process that I teach through hacking teacher burnout. But it started out as the Burned In, I can't remember exactly what it was called. It was like the Burned In ebook. So like I sold it for like $5 on my website, back in like 2017. And then I turned it into like the Burn In teacher training book, something like that. So it had gone through several iterations
Mhm.
before one day I was talking to a friend and I was like, I feel like I want to get this to more people. He was like, why don't you get a publisher? Like turn it into a real book that people can like hold in their hands. They don't have to read it on a screen. And I was
Mhm.
like, you think? And he was like, yeah. So he said, you should actually reach out to Times 10 Publications. Your book would be a perfect hacking series book. There's this hack. And I was like, yeah, I've read those before. And sure enough, I emailed Mark Barnes and he emailed me less than 6 hours later. He was like, yes, absolutely. Yes. This sounds amazing. Send
Mhm.
me your ebook. I want to read it. And we signed a contract less than 2 weeks later. And he picked up, it's a perfect, I don't know if you've ever read a hacking series book before.
No, I haven't.
They're wonderful. They're so easy to consume. They're so structured in a way that it's action based.
Mhm.
And so the burn in process was a perfect fit into this series. So Burned In is an 8-step process that I take you through in hacking teacher burnout. B stands for begin where you are. U is understand your teacher brand. R is reflect on your challenges. N is nurture your strengths and habits. E is extend your reach and possibilities. D is determine your long term goals. I is initiate lasting change. And N stands for never settle.
Mm.
So there are all of these things that I teach teachers and actions that I encourage them to take because we can like learn all the things, but then do nothing with it. Right. And that's where we stay stuck. But what I really believe in is action and tiny actions that create ripple effects into the rest of your life, both in the classroom and in life outside of it, because there are times where we can be burned out in life outside of the classroom too, where we don't really have a whole lot to be excited about. We kind of lost ourselves. We don't know what we enjoy anymore. So this book really does help teachers to create clarity through action
Mhm.
and through deep self-reflection, building, like I said earlier, building self-awareness, building boundaries, building your belief in yourself and your confidence and your
Mhm.
ability to take your next best step.
Wow, that's such a fantastic journey. And I love this couple of the last letters. And they just resonate with me because I've been in that process the
Mhm.
last year or so of like that vision and goals and dreaming piece.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yes.
that was like my last round
Yeah.
in dealing
Yeah.
with burnout was like I totally lost any vision, any goals. Like it was like
Same.
I don't know. Like I've very much a driven personality, an achiever. Like I've always had my goals, and then I was like, huh,
Yeah. Where am I?
what's next?
What? Yeah. And that's honestly when I ask teachers when if they hire me to work as their coach or they join the membership, you know, I'll ask them, like, what do you want? And they're like, I don't even know. I
Mhm.
don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know what I enjoy. I know what I used to enjoy. I don't even know. And like it just breaks your heart because we have this one life. We have this one life to live where we are not given a second chance at the end of our life to try something different. Um, and when you're clouded with burnout, just like I was, I have no clarity. Like I can't see past
Mhm.
this next minute. Like I can't, that's where we're surviving, right? We're surviving day to day. We're not able to see into the future because we're just trying to make it to the weekend, or we're just trying to make it until the next break. We're just trying to make it to summer, or we're just trying to make it to retirement. Like we don't know if we have that.
Mhm.
We don't know if we'll be given that gift of time. And that's why I believe so deeply in like now. Now is the time. Who do you want to be? How do you want to feel? Okay, what do you need to do now to be and feel those things right now?
That's so important. So you've been both the burned out and the burned in teacher.
Mhm.
Give us a picture of the difference between those 2.
Oh
Because
my
I
goodness.
think a lot of us can relate to the burned out teacher, but we're like, burned in, like,
You know
okay.
what? I wish I could pull in my principal from my first school when I was burned out for like those first 8 years and my principal now, because they would not describe the same person.
Mhm,
And my husband, so I've been with my husband since high school. So
mm,
he knows me better than anyone. He could define for you exactly who that person was in those early 2000 years versus the person I am now. I have always, like you, Naomi, I'm very driven. I'm very my top one of my top 5 strengths is futuristic. I'm always thinking about the future. I'm always thinking about what's next. In fact, my husband, like, I'm a starter, but sometimes it's hard for me to finish because I'm like moving to the next thing. Which I've gotten really good at pulling that back a little bit. But when I was really struggling, I cried all the time. I
mhm,
cried all the time. I cried to and from school.
mhm,
I am an emotional person. I am. Like, I cry at commercials. I cry when things are beautiful. I cry at beautiful music. Like, I'm an emotional person, which is totally fine. But I would just cry. I'd cry when I get home. I was extremely moody. I vented all the time. I was talking trash about my administrator,
mm,
talking trash about other teachers, blaming and victimizing, like blaming other people and victimizing myself, like talking nasty about how horrible the system is and it's never going to change. And, maybe it's not, but like I wasted so much time complaining and venting. And even at some points, arguing with other teachers because I knew I was right about this certain position. Um, it's so much more that I'm sure will come up as I'm talking about who I feel like I am now. Now, I don't let those things that are out of my control bother me.
mhm,
Like, let's be honest, they might bother me a little bit, but then I just choose to let it go. Like, I kind of let it run through me and say, this is out of your control. Whether it be students' behavior, whether it be inactive parents, whether it be a decision that an administrator makes, something that happens in the government. I choose to decide what I'm going to spend my time and energy on. And one thing I'm not going to spend my time and energy on is venting and complaining about things that are out of my control. And if I do find myself venting and complaining, I do have to stop and ask myself, like, what can you do about this? And if the answer is nothing, then I have to practice radical acceptance. I don't agree with it. I just accept it for what it is. And I choose to let it go. Um, I smile. I'm like I smile so much more. Like, I intentionally, like, my face, I get very serious about my job. Like, I take it very seriously and I take learning seriously. But I know that I have to relax my face. Like, I am intentional about doing thought catching
mhm,
and really thinking about, okay, how are you presenting yourself right now? I take my teacher brand very seriously. I have very strict time boundaries around when I work and when I don't. I do not work past my contract hours. And I remember specifically saying when I was teaching my first, 8 years in the other district, um, good teachers, they plan. It takes longer to plan good lessons. Good teachers have to stay past their contract hours because your lessons are going to suck if you're only using your plan time, your prep time, your lunchtime, whatever. You have to come in on the weekend if you want to do it right. I like want to shake that girl because for me, that is not my truth anymore. And here's the thing about burden teacher, like, there's no judgment. If Naomi, if you feel that way and that makes you happy and you want to spend hours of after your contract time, you want to come in on the weekend, it invigorates you and you love it, you go for it. Like, you do you. For me, that is not my truth anymore. Um, the people that I surround myself with, I am so picky about who I spend my time with. Um, I had really great friends around the time that I was really, really struggling. But the core value of our group was venting, complaining about our administration and how bad things were at our school and our corporate office and our superintendent and blah, 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 blah. That is what we talked about. We didn't talk about our families. We didn't talk about,
mm,
we didn't talk about our goals. We didn't talk about what we were going to do on summer vacation. Like, we got together, we drank, and we complained.
mhm.
Like, I'm just being point blank honest with you. And now it's like when I've come, my teaching partner's the best. She's like my mom's age and she wears the same perfume. And like we, she's great. I love her. And we talk about fun things. We talk about she talks about her grandkids. I talk about what Jeff and I are doing. Like if we're having a bad day, of course we vent about it. Like, oh my gosh, you will not believe what happened. Or I might be like, hey, what happened over there earlier? And we'll like talk about it. But then it's like, we just let it go because it's just like that's in the past. It is what it is. And let's get on with this. Let's just move on with our lives.
Mhm.
I've cried this year. Like I cried last year. There were things that happened like that just are so frustrating that you have a good cry about it. And then you let it go. Like burned in teacher does not mean that you're smiling all the time and everything is perfect and you've got it all figured out and you have all the answers. I certainly don't. But when I don't, I am sure to ask for help. That is something else. My ego was so huge back those first 8 years. I knew everything. I didn't have to ask for help. And now I'm like, I don't even like I told my principal last year as my first year teaching kindergarten. I walked into her office. I said, I literally had 3 situations today where I'm looking around and I am literally saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I've taught 13 years. I have no idea what to do. And she was like, yeah, that'll happen in kindergarten. So, I work for such a great principal and I just adore her. And the last thing that I will highlight is I'm very intentional about my choices. I'm very intentional about what I choose to spend my time on at school. I'm very intentional with how I talk and who I talk to and who I spend time with. I'm kind to everybody, but I know who my people are and who they are not. And I'm going to be intentional about spending time on the things that will help to move me forward and with people that are going to help me to move forward as well. And that was definitely not, I was not intent. I was very knee jerk, very reactive. And now I'm a very proactive person.
That's such a stark difference.
Hmm.
And that last point you made about like who you surround yourself with and just being intentional in that's come up in other interviews as well, of like you need to have your tribe of people
Hmm.
who, they're not the people that are like you said, you're initially like the people that all you do is vent. These are the people that like fill you up, build you
Yes.
up, like they'll
Yes.
let you have your cry, but then they're like, all right, what are you gonna do?
What are we gonna do about it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And I call those people builder uppers versus terror downers.
Hmm.
The people that are like the crabs in the bucket, like you try to get out and they'll just pull you right back down. Um, and I had someone come at me on social media one time because we talked about I posted something about venting and and this person, commented, venting is healthy. And if I were to come to you and to vent about my bad day and you were to ask me what you could do to help or what we could do to move forward, I would never vent to you again. And I'm like, good. I'm not your person then. Because I
Yeah.
will listen and I will give you a hug and I will talk you through this and I'll probably agree that this situation sucks. But then I'm going to say, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do? I'm not just going to add fuel to the fire and start talking trash about, oh, yeah, well, guess what? You won't believe what happened to me. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So I am some people's person and I'm not other people's people. So it's fine. It's okay. I don't have to be, oh my gosh. Then we could get into Naomi. We could start talking about the people pleasing. Like, come on. I wanted everybody to like me so many years ago. And now I don't care if you like me or not. Like it's okay with me if we're not each other's people. And it's not my job to make you happy. Only you can make yourself happy. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's such an important place to get to, whether you're a teacher or not.
mhm,
Of like, you know what? Not everybody's gonna like you.
yeah,
And like in education, you're guaranteed to upset somebody, no
sure.
matter what you do.
Yeah,
Guaranteed.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
just we as educators take so much of that personally.
mhm,
And we want people to remember that we have lives outside of education, but we so often forget that that person that just attacked us, that parent that just shredded us, just
yeah,
got off a phone call about, their parents been diagnosed with, their husband is doing such, and
Yeah.
like that just came out of an emotional
Absolutely.
moment.
Yeah. And I mean, we could have a whole conversation too about the challenges and the chaos that the parents of our students are living in,
Mhm.
and how they don't know any different. And it's not up to me to try to fix that. It's not up to me to like I have their child for such a small time. The only thing that I can do is build bridges,
Mhm.
not build walls.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's a whole new that again, that radical acceptance comes up, the positive intent, like we don't know what is happening in their lives and they don't know what's happening in my life either. And so
Mhm.
there has to be a bit of grace there. And that is something that I did not have, back in the early 2000s either. I had no grace. I had no empathy. I don't even know if I knew what that word meant.
Mhm. Yeah. I learned a phrase the other day that I was listening to Mel Robbins, her
Yeah.
podcast,
Yes. Love it.
and she called it good to know. Like there are
Hmm.
certain things that come to you that you just say, good to know.
Yeah.
Something happened to her son or whatever, and he just said, it's a good to know, mom.
Mm,
Like, and you say that to the person, and we as educators, we have the parent who shreds us and
mm.
or the kid who does whatever and accuses us, and you just say, good to know. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me? Anything else
Yeah.
that I need to
Yeah.
know?
You know what? I do a version of that. I say, thank you so much for telling me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you so much for telling me. Now, please go sit down.
Right. And it just it
Thank you so much for
shifts
telling. Yeah. Yeah.
shifts the conversation.
Yeah. Because I'm not going to be defensive. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh. There's another. I told you more was going to come up. I was so defensive.
Yeah.
So defensive. And when I look back at it, that was a habit that I had nurtured since I was a child.
Mhm.
And, that goes into my upbringing and the modeling that I was given from my parents. Like, I was such a defensive person and aggressive in my delivery of how I felt about things. And now, thanks to Stephen Covey, I seek to understand, which I never even knew that book existed until 2014. Like, that's not a new book, right? I'd never heard of it. So it's just, yeah, it's just a whole new world. It really is a whole new world to be a burned teacher. And like I said, it does not mean you have it all together. It does not mean you don't have bad days. It does not mean that you're perfect. It does not mean everybody likes you. It just means that you are ready to take your next best step and to stop and reflect if things are not going the way that you want them to go. What is it that I can do about this? If there is something, what is my next best step? And who can help me? And I see this person is struggling. Like, how could I offer to help them? You
Mm.
know, um, if I am the one who's in control of my happiness and I am the one who's in control of my unhappiness, I accept responsibility for my burnout and I accept what I choose to do next.
Mhm.
And it, it it's just it's life changing. It's been life changing for me, and it's been life changing to walk teachers through this process because it's a reminder of how we are better together,
Mhm.
and that when we can come together to help each other to move through this, our 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 lives are better, and then our classrooms are better, and our students are better, and then it's just it comes full circle.
Yeah, it has a whole community effect.
It
So,
does.
what are your like top 2 to 3 recommendations for the teacher who is burnt out, hopeless, where you were
Mhm.
when life kind of fell apart?
Yeah,
Where do they start?
right. Number 1, like, stop fighting it. Stop fighting it. Like, you're not a bad person if you're going through burnout. Number 1, like, say it out loud. I'm burned out. I'm burned out. I'm struggling and I'm stuck and I don't know where to go next. I don't know what to do. The next thing that I would do, excuse me, the next thing that I would suggest doing is talking to someone that you trust
Mhm.
and asking for help. And I know that seems like really simple, but it's not easy. It's
Mhm.
the process is simple. The things that I will tell you to do are simple, but it's not easy and it doesn't end there. Like that's just the next step. So admit you're burned out, talk to somebody that you trust, and then I would read the book. Honestly, like beginning where you are is all about reflecting on what brought you to where you are. Like, how long have I been feeling this way? Did this
Mm,
just start last week? Did I just start to dread school on Sundays? And am I just now starting to have trouble sleeping on Sundays? Okay, that's never been a problem. Like, when did this start?
mm,
Okay, what are my like how long have I been teaching in this classroom? How long have I been teaching this grade level? Did I get a new principal? Did I have a baby? Like I had a baby amidst this trauma and drama that I was going through at school my
mm,
first 2 years of teaching. That played a part in it, but I paid no attention to that. And I totally should have. I should have gotten some medical help at that point. So really reflecting on your triggers and thinking about when did this begin, and then starting with simply identifying what is the most important to you. What are your core values?
mm,
What do you value the most? And you can do this for what is most important to you in your classroom, in your space. And
mm,
what are some core values that are important to you outside of the classroom? Because we
mm,
sometimes lose ourselves inside of our class.
mhm,
I know I gave more than two, but they all kind of mesh together. Because remembering that, in addition to identifying your triggers, you can then those two things can come together. Oh, this happened, and my core value is this, and those two things do not align at all. Like there's a huge misalignment. I really value um, compassion and meeting my students where they are. And this is happening in my school since the new principal started. Okay, there's that misalignment. So,
mhm,
what am I going to do next? Am I going to have a conversation?
mm,
Have I tried having a conversation? It's not going so well. So, do I need to change, or is this misalignment happening because of my team and my grade level?
mm,
Do I need to maybe switch grade levels, even though that's uncomfortable? And I always saw myself teaching second grade for my whole life, but
mhm,
maybe this is just not, maybe this is a sign. This is an opportunity for me to say, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go to third grade. Cause I moved from first grade to second grade one year, and it was a whole different world,
mhm,
and I moved down the hallway. Like this was not across the building. This was down the hallway. Like, and we never consider those opportunities for us because we don't take time to stop and think and
mhm,
reflect on where that misalignment is happening. And this is why I say this is such a deep, personal,
mhm,
time intensive process because we can't just, like I said, we can't just go for a nice walk. Walks are nice,
mhm.
but we can't, like, we need some guidance.
Yeah,
We need some guided reflection on what brought us to where we are so that we can move forward.
yeah, that's important. That someone who's going to ask you those deep questions.
Yeah, and get kinda ouchy with you.
Mhm,
Like,
yeah,
sometimes we're so worried about, triggering people or, making them feel bad, and that's certainly not what the burn-in process is about, but there's self-awareness, and I know Mel Robbins says this too. Self-awareness is one of the biggest tools you can have in your tool belt because you can catch yourself
mhm,
before other people catch it. And that is something that's been so huge for me, and that's what Understand Your Teacher brand is all about, like building self-awareness. I needed to call myself out on my own BS because it was contributing to my burnout for years. But I lacked that self-awareness for so long that it just continued. That habit and that lack of self-awareness continued to drag me back down. I was my own worst enemy in my burnout. That might not be true for you or someone else, but for me it was.
yeah. I think so much of it, I, and I'll speak for myself, is internal and mindset and
Yes.
thinking and all of that. And
Mhm.
that goes with me, whether I stay in education or not. That goes
Oh
with
my
me,
gosh.
whether I change teams, change schools.
Yes.
So,
Yes, and I can tell you that for a fact because when I left the first time and went to the job as the executive director of the nonprofit for 6 months, I took all of those negative beliefs, I took all of my bad habits
mhm,
with me into that workplace, and it did not go well. It did not go well. Now, I didn't get fired, I wasn't asked to leave, it was nothing like that. They ended up I ended up having to close the nonprofit because they were not financially stable, didn't know it until I was there. So that
mm.
I just need to, like, clear the air. I didn't get myself fired. It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I mean, you carry those things with you.
Mhm.
And that's what I had done. I carried those victimized, damaging beliefs into my next short term, but my next career. I even carried them with me into my next district until I had that wake up call.
Mhm. Yeah, you have shared so much with us that just you go deep
Hmm.
and challenge us to do that. So I'd like to just wrap up with three quick fun questions.
Sure.
So I'd love to know what you are reading, watching, and listening to.
Okay. I am currently reading It Ends With Us
Okay.
by Colleen Hoover. That's my fun read that I read before bed. And I
Mhm.
recently just bought 3 books about burnout for the summer.
Yeah.
I know one is called Burnout. It's by the Navasky sisters, I want to say is their last name. I can't remember. So that's going to be one of my summer reads. And then I'm watching, don't judge me, I'm watching Selling Sunset. It is my favorite show ever. I love, like maybe in another life I was a realtor. I don't know, but I just love the homes just make my jaw drop. Is ridiculous. And the drama is just something that I cannot relate to at all. It's just so entertaining to me. So again, I said, don't judge me.
No
And then
judgment
what am
here.
I listening to? I've been listening to Mel Robbins podcast like crazy. Love her so much. The CEO Teacher podcast with Casey Morris. And those have been the two that I've been listening to the most right
Yeah,
now.
Mel Robbins, she's just so real
Yes, I
about just life
appreciate that.
in
Mhm.
general. And the episode I just listened to was like about not caring what people think, which so
Yes,
relates
I
to
just
what we were
finished
just
that one
talking about.
too. Yeah, how to
Right?
not give a crap. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so good of like, she
Yeah,
really does not care what
he
other
does not
people
care.
think. And like, I'm not at the
Yeah.
level that she's at, but I'm definitely not at the level I was
Yeah,
when I was younger.
yes.
And some of that, like, I feel like as we hit our 30s, like you start to come into like that confidence in who you are and like, no, this is who I am. And it's okay that I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Um,
Yes.
but it still takes some work and like, you know what? This is who I am. It
Yeah.
really does not matter what that person at Starbucks in line behind me thinks of me,
No,
you
no,
know?
I agree. I just turned 40 in November, and I'm pretty sure it took me until my late 30s to finally fall into that. And I know I still have work to do, but yeah, it's absolutely, I mean, and that's fighting those people pleasing tendencies that we
Mhm.
have. So yeah,
Yeah.
good
And just
stuff.
like being willing to be like, you know what? I don't care if that's in style. Like I'm totally at this point where I'm like, I don't care if that's in style. That does not work for me.
Yeah, that's
You
good on
know?
you for that, but not for me. No.
I'm like, I still want to
I
look
hear you.
stylish, but that one doesn't work.
100%.
Well, thank you, Amber, for joining us. I so appreciate your time and what you shared with us. And I want to thank our audience. Um, look at what Amber has for us. Oh, I forgot that Amber has a free gift for you as well. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. So you can grab the chapter 1 of Hacking Teacher Burnout for
Mm.
free. If you go to burnedinteacher.com/free chapter, you can dive in and see, see what's in store for you if you choose to hop on that burned in path with me.
Awesome. And I'll give you the link for that as well. So you can just click it and head there. I encourage you to read that first chapter because I think you're going to get the book
Yeah, you're going to
after you
love
read
it.
the first chapter. So thank you for joining us. This has been such a great summit so far. If you have not caught the other interviews, we have other people like Amber who are sharing their journey, who are sharing their expertise when it comes to stress, and that it is more than just a day of self care. It's actual habits and deep work that we have to do to make the change. Because if you're just surviving till summer, if you're just surviving until Friday, you are just surviving, but you don't have to. You really can thrive. And that's
Mhm.
what these interviews are about. And there's so much practical advice in them. So thank you for listening. And thank you, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me, Naomi.
You're welcome.